In the spacious hall of the federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles, the scent of old wood mixed with the tension of anticipation. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the worn oak benches. The hum of the air conditioner blended with the whispers of reporters feverishly taking notes and the restrained coughs of a few elderly visitors in the back rows. The date, April 7, 2025, would forever be etched in the memory of those who witnessed this scene. Elon Musk, founder of Tesla and a man whose ideas had changed the world, stood before Judge Edward C. Russell, whose gray eyebrows were furrowed in irritation. The hearing concerned a lawsuit from Tesla shareholders who accused Musk of unilaterally deciding to provide financial support to the company, bypassing the board of directors. For those over 55, raised on stories of Wall Street and corporate wars, this was a familiar plot, a battle of power, money, and principles. Musk, dressed in a simple black suit without a tie, stood at the podium, his posture straight but not arrogant. His gray-blue eyes gleamed with cold calm, though inside, as he confessed to friends, a storm was brewing. He wasn't here to fight, he was here to explain. Tesla needed swift action to survive in an era of economic instability. But Judge Russell, known for his tough stance on corporate magnates, had other plans. "Mr. Musk," began the judge, his voice low and sharp, like the crack of dry branches. "Do you think you can just pour millions into a company without asking anyone? This isn't your personal piggy bank. We have laws, rules, procedures. You're not here to make unilateral decisions." The room froze. Reporters held their breath, waiting for a reaction. An elderly couple in the third row, the man in a checkered shirt and the woman with neatly styled gray hair, exchanged glances. They remembered the scandals of the 80s, when magnates like Michael Milken broke the rules and paid for it. But Musk didn't resemble those loud rebels. He didn't raise his voice or pound his fist on the table. Instead, he slightly tilted his head, as though considering the judge's words. "Your Honor," he replied quietly but confidently, "I didn't try to bypass the rules. I tried to save a company I've built for 20 years. Tesla isn't just a business. It's jobs, innovation, the future. I'm ready to explain every decision, every number. But if you think I acted wrongly, let's talk about it." Judge Russell snorted, his face turning red with anger. He slammed the gavel down, and the sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. "Enough, Mr. Musk. Shut up. You're not in your office at SpaceX, where you can give orders. Here, I decide who speaks and when." The tension in the room became palpable, like the scent of ozone before a storm. Musk's attorney, Elizabeth Thorne, a slender woman in her middle years with a sharp gaze, stood up to object, but Musk stopped her with a gesture. He looked at the judge, not defiantly, but with a strange mixture of respect and determination. The elderly man in the checkered shirt leaned toward his wife and whispered, "He won't back down so easily. Did you see how he's holding up?" Meanwhile, behind the scenes, other movements were already underway. In the courthouse corridors, Tesla's lawyers were talking on the phone with board members, and social media posts began appearing from company employees. One of them, a mechanic from the Nevada factory, wrote, "Musk does everything for us. Without him, I wouldn't have a job." The hashtag Stand With Elon was gaining traction, though no one in the courtroom knew about it yet. But the most interesting moment came 20 minutes later. Judge Russell suddenly received a message from his secretary. His face, already stern, turned ashen. He announced a break and quickly left the room, holding the phone to his ear. The reporters started to stir, sensing that something was happening. The elderly woman in the third row squeezed her husband's hand and whispered, "Something's wrong. Did you see his eyes?" When the hearing resumed an hour later, Judge Russell did not return. Instead, sitting in his place was Judge Margaret Lindsay, a calm woman with a soft Southern accent. She announced that Russell had been removed from the case due to unforeseen circumstances. The room buzzed. Musk, sitting at the defense table, smiled slightly, but his gaze remained focused. He knew this wasn't a coincidence. Someone, perhaps the Tesla board, perhaps influential friends in Washington, had made their move. But he wasn't rushing to celebrate. This was just the beginning. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled of exhaust fumes and hot asphalt. Cars hummed down the street, and a crowd of protesters, some for Musk, some against, gathered by the steps. The elderly couple exited the building, holding hands. "This isn't over, Mary," the man said. "This Musk. He's up to something." She nodded. "And I want to know exactly what." When Judge Margaret Lindsay took her seat at the bench, the courtroom fell into silence, broken only by the creaking of chairs and the soft hum of the air conditioner. Her presence contrasted sharply with Russell's rough demeanor. She radiated calm, yet her sharp and attentive eyes hinted that this woman would miss no detail. An elderly couple in the third row, Mary and Jack, leaned forward, sensing that the story had just taken a new turn. Outside the windows, the sun began to set, painting the Los Angeles sky in shades of orange and pink, but inside the room, the atmosphere grew increasingly heavy. "Mr. Musk," Lindsay began, her voice soft yet firm like southern oak. "I've reviewed the case materials. You claim your actions were necessary to save Tesla. But the shareholders believe you violated their rights. I want to hear your version. In full." Musk stood, his hands resting calmly on the table. He took a deep breath, and the scent of old varnish from the podium mixed with a faint aroma of coffee from one of the reporters. "Your Honor," he said, his voice steady, but there was a hint of passion in it, "I did not act out of selfishness. The economy was unstable, suppliers were refusing to work with us due to payment delays, and competitors were waiting to tear us apart. I injected money not to control, but to keep the company afloat. Every dollar is documented. I am ready to show everything, from letters with the banks to recordings of negotiations with the team." Lindsay nodded, scribbling something in her notebook. But before she could respond, the courtroom doors creaked open loudly. Everyone turned. A man in a gray suit entered, thin, with gray stubble and a tense expression. He quickly walked to the plaintiff's table and whispered something to their lawyer, Richard Greenlee, whose eyebrows shot up in surprise. Greenlee stood, his voice trembling with excitement. "Your Honor, we have new evidence. We request a recess to present it." Lindsay glanced at him over her glasses. "What evidence, Mr. Greenlee? You should have submitted everything in advance." "It just came to light," he replied, holding a thin folder. "It concerns Judge Russell's dismissal. And it changes everything." The room erupted in whispers. Reporters frantically typed on their laptops. Jack squeezed Mary's hand and whispered, "I told you, something fishy is going on." Musk turned to Elizabeth Thorne, his lawyer, and quietly asked, "Do you know anything about this?" She shook her head, her face unreadable, but her eyes gleamed with curiosity. Lindsay slammed her gavel, calling for silence. "I want to see this evidence. Now," she said. Greenlee approached the podium and handed the folder to the judge. Lindsay opened it, and for a moment, her face froze. She glanced at Musk, then at Greenlee. "Are you claiming Mr. Musk is involved in Judge Russell's dismissal?" "Yes, Your Honor," Greenlee replied, his voice gaining strength. "We have phone records between Tesla representatives and high-ranking officials in the state's legal department. They were pressuring to have Russell removed due to his bias. This is judicial manipulation." Musk stood up abruptly, his calm cracking like thin ice. "This is absurd," he said, his voice rising, though still controlled. "I have nothing to do with this. If anyone from my team did something like this, I want to know who and why." Lindsay raised her hand, stopping him. "Sit down, Mr. Musk. We will sort this out." But the room was already buzzing. Reporters rushed outside to break the news. Outside the courthouse, the crowd of protesters had doubled, some chanting "Musk is a hero," while others held signs reading "Justice for shareholders." The air smelled of gasoline and hot dogs from the street vendors who seized the opportunity to make money from the crowd. Meanwhile, in the back of the courtroom, Jack and Mary watched everything with wide eyes. Jack leaned toward his wife. "If he pulled this off, he's a genius. But if not, who's pulling the strings?" Mary nodded, her fingers clutching her purse. I want to know the truth. And I'm not leaving here until I do. The unexpected twist. While Judge Lindsay called for a recess to review the new evidence, another story was unfolding behind the scenes. In a small office 2 blocks from the courthouse, a man named Thomas Vale, a former Tesla engineer, sat at a desk piled with papers and printouts. His hands trembled as he flipped through old emails, the ones he had sent Musk 2 years ago warning about the company's financial problems. Musk had brushed him off, saying everything is under control. Vale, hurt and disappointed, left Tesla and vowed revenge. It was Vale who had supplied the plaintiffs with the evidence about Tesla's pressure on the legal department. But it was a forgery, the phone records were fabricated, and the connections were made up. Vale didn't just want to beat Musk in court. He wanted to destroy him, ruin the reputation of the man he had once considered his hero. The irony was that Musk genuinely didn't know about Russell's dismissal. It was the result of an internal struggle in the state's legal department, where Russell had long made enemies due to his harshness. When the hearing resumed, Lindsay returned with a stern expression. She looked at Greenlee and said, "These evidences raise doubts. I order an investigation into their origin. And Mr. Musk, you will have the opportunity to respond." Musk nodded, his face remaining calm, but inside he felt that something was wrong. He didn't know that the real enemy wasn't the shareholders or Judge Russell, but a ghost from his own past who now held an axe over his head. The courtroom in Los Angeles felt smaller when the hearing resumed the next day. The air was thick with tension, mingled with the smell of coffee and damp paper as reporters frantically flipped through their notebooks. The sun had already set, and the cold fluorescent light cast sharp shadows on the faces of those present. Judge Margaret Lindsay sat at her desk, her gaze unwavering, yet tinged with a hint of fatigue. The elderly couple, Jack and Mary, took their places in the third row once more, holding hands as if afraid to miss the climax of the drama unfolding before them. Lindsay tapped her gavel, and the whispering in the room died down. She lifted the file containing the evidence presented by the plaintiff and spoke. After careful analysis, we have determined that these recorded conversations are fabricated. Their source is not Tesla, but a third party whose identity is currently being established. Mr. Greenlee, your clients must explain how these documents came into their possession. Richard Greenlee, the plaintiff's lawyer, turned pale. He began muttering about reliable sources, but his words drowned in the murmur of the room. Reporters shuffled in their seats, and the crowd outside the windows erupted in cheers, both supportive and outraged. Musk sat silently, his hands resting calmly on the table, but his eyes shone with relief and focus. He knew this was not yet a victory, but the first blow had been dealt. Elizabeth Thorne, his attorney, leaned toward him and whispered, "We need to find out who did this. This isn't just a coincidence." Musk nodded, his mind buzzing like the engines at Tesla's factory. He stood up when Lindsay called on him. "Your Honor," he began, his voice quiet but piercing through every corner of the room, "I did not seek conflict. I came here to defend what I believe in, a company that gives people jobs, hope, and a chance at a better future. If anyone from my past or present is trying to stop me, I will not fight them with my fists. I want to talk. Find out why. And if I am wrong, I am ready to admit it." Lindsay tilted her head slightly, as if evaluating his words. Jack whispered to Mary. "He doesn't back down, but he's not aggressive either. Clever guy." Meanwhile, 2 blocks from the courthouse, Thomas Vale sat in his cramped office, his face covered in sweat. He knew his plan was falling apart. The phone rang. It was a reporter from the local newspaper who had somehow unearthed his name. Vale slammed the receiver down and began packing his things, but the door opened, and 2 men in dark suits entered, the agents Lindsay had ordered to find the source of the forgery. "Mr. Vale," one of them said, "we need to talk." In the courtroom, the hearing was nearing its end. Lindsay announced that the case would be reviewed in light of the new developments, but this time with an emphasis on Tesla's transparency. She glanced at Musk. "Mr. Musk, I expect you to provide all the documents that support your claims. If you are right, the truth will be on your side." Musk nodded. "You'll have them, Your Honor. Every last digit." When Lindsay struck her gavel, calling for a break, the room erupted in applause and shouts. Reporters rushed out to share the news. Musk had avoided a blow, but the fight was far from over. Jack and Mary slowly stood up, their faces glowing with excitement. "He did it, Mary," Jack said, his voice trembling with awe. "Not with shouting, not with money, but with words. Who would have thought?" Mary smiled, her eyes shining. "And this isn't over. He's up to something, I can feel it." Finale, the euphoria of change. The next morning, Los Angeles woke to the hum of news headlines. Musk promises transparency for Tesla, fabricated evidence uncovered, Musk's mysterious enemy caught. Thomas Vail confessed to everything. His motives were personal resentment, not justice. He spoke about the letters he had written to Musk, and how being ignored had pushed him to seek revenge. But instead of triumphing, Musk made an unexpected move. He invited Vail to meet, not in court, not in a lawyer's office, but in a small cafe on the outskirts of town. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm bread, and outside, the cars of the morning rush hummed. Vail walked in, his shoulders slumped, his eyes avoiding Musk's gaze. "Why did you do it, Thomas?" Musk quietly asked, holding a cup of coffee. Vail swallowed, his voice hoarse. "You didn't listen. I tried to warn you about the problems, and you brushed me off. I felt like nothing." Musk sat silently for a long time, staring out the window. Then he set down his cup and said, "I was wrong. I should have listened to you. But you could have just talked to me, instead of going down this path." Vail looked up, surprised. "You're not going to destroy me?" "No," Musk replied. "I want you back. Help me make Tesla better. You know where we messed up." This conversation became a turning point. Vail agreed, and within a week, he was working with Musk's team on a new transparency plan, a public report for shareholders and employees, where everyone could see where the money went and why. Shareholders, initially outraged, began to see this as a chance for real cooperation. Tesla's reputation not only recovered, it soared. When Jack and Mary read about it in the newspaper, sitting at breakfast in their small kitchen, their faces broke into smiles. Jack leaned back in his chair, holding the newspaper in his hands. He didn't just win, Mary. He outsmarted everyone, calmly, without yelling. And he even brought this guy back. Now, that's what I call understanding. Mary laughed, her voice filled with warmth. This is more than a victory. It's hope. If he can change something like this, maybe we can still change something too. Outside their home, the sun rose over the Los Angeles suburbs, casting golden rays onto the pavement. The story wasn't finished yet. There were more challenges, more trials, more ideas ahead. But at that moment, when the smell of coffee mixed with the morning freshness, it felt like Musk's small step, a dialogue instead of a war, was the beginning of something great. And that feeling, that euphoria from understanding that even in chaos, there's room for humanity, stayed with everyone who saw the story through to the end.